Capes on the Couch podcast is for entertainment purposes only. Dr. Issues is a psychiatrist, but he is not your psychiatrist and does not have knowledge of your individual situation. For any personal mental health concerns, please consult your own healthcare providers. For medical emergencies, please call 911 or the designated number in your area immediately. Remember that you are not alone and help is out there.
Hello and welcome to Capes on the Couch, where comics get counseling. I'm Anthony Sitko.
And I'm Dr. Issues.
This is episode number 65, issue number 65, and this is a me pick. This is not one of our patrons. This is not anything that any of them have selected or probably would select, but it's a character that I've wanted to do for a while. It's a character that I've been interested in for 20-something years, and was just recently in the news. So I said, why not make an episode about him? So we're talking all about the Maxx. A lot of you are probably shaking your heads because unless you are of a certain age, you probably don't even know who the Maxx is. And I would venture to say that, you know, the folks in Doc's and I age range of mid to late 30s and older would probably remember The Oddities, the cartoon show on MTV.
Yep.
In which the Maxx was one of the stars, along with The Head.
Yeah. And I saw every episode of The Head, and then it switched over to the Maxx. And full disclosure, I wasn't as interested. I don't know why. It didn't quite catch on as much as a giant head with an alien inside did, but whatever.
The Head was some pretty freaky stuff. And then you had the Maxx. So this is probably circa 94, 95, thereabouts. And it was a really trippy show. But one of the things that I really appreciated about the show was that it essentially was the comic with sound in terms of faithfulness of the adaptation, the art style. Everything was so fantastic. It was, and that is in large part because Sam Kieth, the creator, was very heavily involved. And kudos to MTV for bringing him on board. They could have just easily said, well, we're just going to make the show and the creator has nothing to do with it. But they brought him on. And so the episodes are basically animated panels in essence, in large part. So, you can track it on Amazon, I believe it's available. The entire series is available on DVD if you are so inclined. It's not that expensive. And after rereading the series, because I read like maybe one or two issues way back in the day, but that was about it. And I hadn't read anything up until I was prepping for this episode. And I think I definitely want to pick it up on Amazon. It's like $18.
Cool.
12 or however many episodes there are. And so I would advise you to check it out. So before we get started, I made a note here because I've been doing it at the end of the show and not at the top of the show. So a little bit of housekeeping. We are doing a sticker giveaway. If you listen to us on a platform that allows you to rate and review our shows, either Apple Podcast or Podchaser, and you leave us a rating and review, and then you send us a screen cap of that review with your address, we will send you a sticker because we appreciate all of the ratings and reviews. That is what allows us to get more popular, and that is what allows us to grow and have more people hear us. And frankly, that's sort of why we're doing this. And as I said before, this idea I stole from our friends over at Freudian Sips, our co-mental health Avengers. So Anna and Bonnie came up with that idea, and I said, that's brilliant. I'm just going to straight uphill for that. So I'm giving them credit. So is it plagiarizing if you give credit? I don't know.
Considering they didn't have it copywritten or patented, you're an attorney. You know about that stuff.
Yeah, I thought about that. Well, I'm an attorney for a couple more weeks anyway.
Boy.
And our weekly podcast shout out this week is our friends over at The Wrestle Special, Travis Tubasing, an amazing, fantastic host, and a sort of rotation of guests. They talk wrestling and not wrestling. In fact, I would venture to say that the show is probably 60% not wrestling, 40% actual wrestling. But if you are in any way, shape, or form interested in how pop culture and pro wrestling collide, and in ways you probably wouldn't expect. Like there was just one about which Thanksgiving dish does each member of the NWO match up with. And I think Scott Norton was mashed potatoes.
Wow.
And so, yeah, it's very interesting. As I said, if you like wrestling, you get a lot more out of the show than if you don't, but it's still a highly entertaining listen. And Travis, if you want me to guest on the episode, hit me up. Hint, hint, nudge, nudge, wink, wink. So if you're listening, Travis, hit me up. But you can find them basically just, wherever you find podcasts at The Wrestle Special. They're on social media, etc. And Travis is very active, especially on Instagram. He's got a lot of good stuff up there, a lot of cool videos, things from the 90s, the Attitude Era that you and I probably have blocked away and repressed in our memories.
Nah, I think about that almost every day at some point. Some reference. It's either going to be Rock, Stone Cold, DX.
No, I'm talking he goes deeper than that.
Oh, no.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Oh.
Also, Travis is one of the biggest Macho Man fans I have ever met.
Wow.
So, in any case, let's get to the Maxx. So, we're going to do this a little differently in the sense that the comic is very out there. And so the way we're going to describe the story is chronologically, which is not how the story is told.
No, there's plenty of flashbacks, plenty of ins and outs, different styles for different areas of the story. Well done. Well done. But if you pick this up and read it for yourself, don't worry about being almost halfway through the run and still feeling somewhat confused.
Yeah. And as I said, so we're going to tell this chronologically. And the other thing that I want to mention just right off the bat, because there are a number of main characters and their stories are all so linked together that you cannot tell one without the other. This is not going to be just focused on the Maxx. This is going to be on all of the main characters of the Maxx. And as a result, there's not going to be a skit because there's no realistic way. We would literally have to create a brand new Maxx story to fit all of the characters in there because you can't focus on one without touching the others.
Plus, we don't have the budget to create an alternate plane of reality that's inside our minds.
Yeah. I mean, I could do some sound engineering, but it would take a long ass time to do. And I don't have the time, nor do we have the budget for that. So the Maxx was created by Sam Kieth and Jim Sinclair. He debuted in Primer number 5 as Max the Hare back in 1983. But the Maxx as we know him, the purple and yellow, interesting looking behemoth of a character, debuted in Darker Image number 1, March 1993. This was an Image book, and it's currently in reprints now with some updated coloring, much sharper scans of the original artwork. So I would advise you to go out and pick up the reprints because the artwork is just going to be that much clearer. And the artwork is fantastic. I just want to point that out very quickly, that Sam Kieth really draws inspiration from a number of artists. There's some Franzetta in there, I would say a lot of Sienkiewicz. There is some definite New Mutants era Bill Sienkiewicz style in there. There's just some straight up 90s, just over exaggerated anatomy. The styles can really shift depending on the location, as Doc said. This story is really told through the full use of the medium, that because there's flashbacks, the art style changes depending on the location and the point of view of the character. So I know we're sort of beating around the bush, but I kind of feel like I need to prep the audience for this, because if you're not familiar with the character and you haven't read any of the books, what we're about to describe is a head trip. So Doc, before we dive in, anything else?
We're going to talk about one character, mainly referring to him as Dr. Gone.
Mr. Gone.
Mr. Gone, sorry. I just want to point out that the lettering was really, really annoying to read. Just my opinion.
Oh, when he was speaking?
Oh, yeah. I get why they did it, but that was a slog. I'm used to a certain cadence that I can read through comics, and I had to really concentrate to make sure I understood some of the words there.
Yeah. Oh, and one last thing I want to add, because of the nature of what happens to some of these characters, I do want to give a content and a trigger warning for sexual assault and abuse, murder, and abandonment. There's some really heavy stuff in there that this is very much deconstructs the idea of your typical superhero trope. So Julie Winters, because I think a lot of the story cannot be told without referencing, of course, Julie Winters. So Julie Winters is a free-spirited social worker. She is beaten, raped, and left to die by a man that she helped. She basically stopped the car. She saw this man needed help, and then he beat, raped, and left her to die. So she copes by hiding in her subconscious in a place she refers to as the Outback. It's very grassy. There's a lot of plains. There's some very odd creatures that inhabit the Outback. And there she is the Leopard Queen. She's this powerful goddess. And so this is sort of inside her mind. And this is her coping mechanism. And it gets to the point that the Outback and reality blur. And I should add again that this is the universe in which the story takes place. These things are just sort of accepted.
Yeah.
That this is just, oh yeah, and you can go to the Outback and everybody has a spirit animal, and hers is a rabbit because she helped a rabbit that was hit by a car when she was a child.
The darn thing just kept staying alive, basically twitching and making these weird sounds at night. That's how her parents find out about it, and Mom ultimately gets rid of the thing.
Yes, Mom takes care of the rabbit with a shovel. So Julie's spirit animal is a rabbit. So sometime after this incident with the sexual assault, she hits a homeless man with her car. And the homeless man, we find out much, much later, his name is Dave. And instead of helping him, because now she's got flashbacks to the last time she stopped to help somebody, she leaves him in an alley and she covers him with trash. Now, this incident opens up a link to her Outback, and this lampshade that happens to pass through the barrier or touch the barrier. Now it has some of that Outback magic attached to it. The lampshade covers the homeless man, and it eventually covers his entire body. It gives him a costume, and it creates this link between him and Julie. So now 3 years later, this is where issue 1 starts. So everything we've just described to you, you don't find out for some 20 odd issues, depending on what part of the story. So, I mean, they really play with and tease out everything that's happened with these backstories. So you start off the series, Max is just this giant purple, the man, now known as Maxx. He's working as a mostly unsuccessful hero.
Considering the places he hangs out are where most homeless people hang out, in dark alleys, in a cardboard box, or under a bridge. Yeah, I would say he's really struggling.
Yeah, he's living in a cardboard box in an alley, and he's constantly getting arrested. And then Julie repeatedly bails him out of jail. Neither one of them can explain their connection, but they feel very strongly towards one another. And so that's sort of, like I said, where the book starts, and you're going, what the hell is this? Who are these people? What are they doing with each other? Why am I reading this? Why is this so interesting? But why is this artwork all over the place stylistically? So then we introduce Mr. Gone, and he is a serial killer / rapist, and he has a telepathic connection to Julie, and he harasses her repeatedly. Max, in an effort to protect Julie, because Max exists in the real world and the Outback, where he serves the Leopard Queen. So he's, in his own mind, he goes back and forth between reality and the Outback. Max fights Mr. Gone both in the real world and the Outback. And I think it's in the second issue, Mr. Gone gets beheaded by Julie, who he's coming after her for reasons we don't know yet at the time. And again, we find out much, much later. And so he's beheaded, but he manages to survive through his connections to the Outback.
Right. I want to say that some of these transitions happen where they appear psychotic. In other words, they will shift from what's going on in what we would consider to be our normal-ish reality and realize that what they were doing in the Outback somehow translated into our world. Meanwhile, there are times where they're dreaming, and that's where everything is happening, and they think that they've accomplished some major things in what we would consider to be our world, and wake up and say, oh, I guess that was all a dream. Nothing else changed. So you don't know as you're reading which way it's going to go. And it almost becomes a guessing game as to what's going to continue in our world and what's just being left in the Outback.
Yeah, it's like I said, it's a very surreal thing. I'm not even going to get into the
No. The think the id. They are these creatures. They're in the Outback. They can come over to our world, but if they do, they wreak havoc. And there are docile versions of them. There are other creatures in the Outback, including one gigantic thing that can destroy everything. But you know what? I'm not going there.
Yeah. Because they're not really. I mean, they're important to the main story, but they're not important to the story that we're going to tell here. So Julie, meanwhile, as I mentioned, she's a social worker. She is working with a troubled teenager named Sarah, whose mother is very concerned about Sarah because she said she lacks discipline. Sarah is very withdrawn. She's very socially awkward.
She wants to be a writer, from what I remember.
Yes, if I recall correctly. And so Sarah's mother doesn't want her to grow up like her father, who we later find out is, dun, 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 Mr. Gone. So that was one of the big twists of the story, is that we find out that Sarah's dad is this serial killer, serial rapist, etc.
Yeah. But wait, there's more.
There's more. Trust me, we're barely even scratching the surface and we're glossing over a good amount of stuff. Julie ends up pregnant because she just goes off. She's just decides to be the free spirit. I mean, mind you, this is like 1993. This is being written 93, 94. And she's dressing like it's 1968 with the bell-bottom pants and the barefoot. And she's very much a hippie.
So I'm going to try and summarize how she ended up pregnant. She had sex with a guy and stole a car. And eventually she ended up somewhere else and had sex with another guy and continued this pattern until at one point she met this really handsome guy and got knocked up by him and never saw him again.
Yeah, Julie just kind of went off to find herself, and that led to a lot of open sexual experimentation and such. So meanwhile, while this is happening, the beheaded Mr. Gone is still seeking out Julie because he is adamant that she needs to know the truth. And she doesn't want to hear it, but he is persistent. And at one point, there's a kid that he tries to bribe, and I'm not going to get into that. Because
someone that Sarah hung out with, and they had these ideas of who is stronger, the Maxx or Mr. Gone. And then I will say Mr. Gone gets stepped on a lot.
Yeah, he does. Yeah. But he, again, manages to survive even as this sort of goo with a face and eyes. And he literally pops up through her toilet and ends up talking to Julie on the ceiling because he's stuck there. Don't try and read too much into this. It makes just as much sense in context as out of, which is to say none at all. So Mr. Gone explains of who he is to Julie. While she was a child, Mr. Gone was known to her as Uncle Artie. He was a friend of her parents, and he would tell her these amazing stories about visiting Australia and all the weird and wacky stuff that he saw while he was down there, because in Australia, everything, of course, as we know, is evolved to kill you. And that's not in the Maxx. That's in reality. There's any number of things in Australia that can kill you. But in any case...
Want a mammal that lays eggs? You got it.
Yeah, seriously. So these stories manifest as Julie's Outback. And now that Julie knows the truth, she begins reconciling her past, and now her Outback begins to dissipate, and Maxx begins to lose his connection to Julie. And this leaves Maxx essentially powerless. So this is the first 20 issues of the book. Then issue 21 happens, written by Alan Moore.
Oh, dear.
The Alan Moore. And the comic takes a 10-year jump. So now we go from 1995 to 2005.
Now, what we've already described is pretty trippy. So you already gave a trippy background to Alan Moore. That is going to really take a big turn then. So,
to quote the Transformers movie, it is the year 2005. And now the focus is on Sarah, who she has her own Maxx, and he's a homeless man named Norbert with the head of a horse.
Because that's her spirit animal.
Because again, Julie's was a rabbit and Sarah's is a horse. So now Sarah is beginning to reconcile with her father, who we come to find out is completely repentant of everything that he did. Or did he really do it? That's part of what we're going to get into a little bit when we get into issues. Now she has to battle a murderous escapee from her own Outback, which manifests as Iago, this massive, monstrous yellow banana slug. Not making any of this up. Swear to God.
Yep, it wants to give hugs that kill you.
Yes, it has a list.
Yep.
It's basically like Santa if Santa were a murderous banana slug. Like 10 feet tall.
This is where I checked out. I'm not going to lie, people. I read the entire synopsis of everything, so I know what was going on. But just organically reading this, I said, I'm done. I'm out.
Yeah, now this is like 25. There's 35 total issues of the Maxx. This is all around issue 25 or so. And I managed to slog my way through. The latter third of this entire series is just, whew. So long story short, to summarize, Sarah needs the help of Julie. Julie's, at this point, she's basically abandoned her child. So her child seeks out Dave, the original Maxx, to help bring Julie back together. So Julie, her son, and Dave help, and Mr. Gone, who's now going by his name of Artie Pender, because that's his real name. They help Sarah battle the slug, and then at which point time and the universe starts to destroy itself, and time is ending, and so everything just sort of ends happily.
Everybody, this isn't the way that it's described, but everybody gets kind of their own version of the Outback, which is whatever it is that you want life to be and how you want to make it. So in a way, it has that kind of positive outlook, but at the same time, you just tossed away a common reality. That's not really cool in my book, but whatever.
So like I said, there is so much more in these 35 issues that we didn't even get into, but I just felt that there was really, honestly, there's no other way for me to summarize this story or these characters. And this is why I'm saying that when we get into this, there isn't a skit, because you can't tell the story of the Maxx without referencing everything with Julie and Mr. Gone and even Sarah. So might as well let's talk about all of them. So let's jump into the issues, of which there are myriad. So let's start with Maxx, Dave. So one of the key things is the Maxx, at least throughout the vast majority of his story, he is very uncertain of who he is and what his connection is to Julie. All he knows is that he feels very strongly he must protect her, even though he's not really sure why. But this is his calling. This is what he must do. This is, to borrow a phrase from Thor Ragnarok, because that's what heroes do. And he's not very good at it. And Julie recognizes that, but he still does it anyway. So, I mean, that's just one thing that I could touch on for Maxx.
Yeah, I'll run with it. Okay. I can think of a positive way and a negative way that this can have an impact in relationships and in society at large. I'll let you choose. Do you want me to do the positive first or the negative first?
Start with the negative so we can end on a happier note.
Okay. This can be very stalkerish. Just saying up front, the idea that people have developed a connection with someone that doesn't reciprocate, either because they don't know the person. That's not in this case. We know that they're definitely connected. But the other person may not recognize just how powerful this connection is. And for Julie's sake, it sounds like she knew that they needed to have interactions and a relationship of some sort, but she kept it at a certain distance. Maxx was all in from the start. He wanted to be wherever she was. If she was ever even close to being in trouble, he needed to do whatever was necessary to take care of everything that was happening, including times where it seemed like he was killing people. And I remember there was one situation, it was a car or something, where the person said, "Oh, you knew that was a crash test dummy or something." And he's like, "Oh, yeah."
Yeah, Mr. Gone shows up and he's taking this car full of people hostage, And Max straight up destroys the car. And you killed my hostage. You killed my hostage. And then the guy, the idiot teenager standing at the gas station, who goes, "Oh man, it was a good thing you knew that was a dummy." And Max is like, "What? That was a dummy?" Like
Right.
he didn't know,
Right.
nor did he care.
Right. Exactly. When he has that one singular focus of fight, save people, whatever, it really isn't even about that. It's more like, this is the one thing that I know I have to do in life, and I will not dedicate any other energy or effort besides what I'm doing in this moment. So that type of thing is not going to ingratiate you with anybody else that you encounter. And we see that. That's why he's isolated in poor conditions, except for Julie, because there's this glimmer of this positive thing that she's willing to hang on to, as many people who have a history of abuse do, but I'll get into that with Julie later. And any deviation from that for Max creates incredible turmoil. We see this when at some point Julie leaves. She says she's going to, I know it's out to the west, like San Francisco, maybe?
I want to say, yeah, San Francisco.
It's not, I mean, the actual city's not relevant, but she makes it clear, I'm leaving. And I love the art style for this particular panel, because in the background, not with what Max is saying, because all he's saying is fine or whatever, and not really giving many words, but in the background, you just see, please, 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 just repeatedly, and at the end saying, don't leave. Because that's the level of dependence that he has developed emotionally. So is it fair for him to have to deal with things that way with Julie? No. Was it his fault that he ended up in that situation with Julie? Not necessarily. But did he do anything himself to actually change the dynamic? No. And so he ends up in the pits of despair, at least for that particular side. So that's an example of the negative that can come from this. So now to switch over to the positive. We actually have plenty of opportunities in our lives where this happens, and it happens organically. I'm not necessarily even talking about love in the romantic sense. We have the opportunity anytime we meet someone that we've never met before to have a stronger relationship than when they first came into our lives. And it's our choice. We can either choose to let that go to the wayside, either because we don't have the time or resources to develop that relationship, or we can foster it by doing more. In this case, the Max certainly does more. He is willing, when random things come into Julie's apartment, and for whatever reason, he's now a shrunken size with another character that we're not going to go into and whatnot, willing to fight these battles and be in a different plane of reality while he's doing it. All for the sake of making sure that this person stays safe, this person that he cares about, even if it was just an initial random encounter that ended up linking them. That can be a wonderful feeling, even when the person doesn't necessarily feel the way that you do. Just the fact that you're willing to be altruistic almost. I mean, he clearly has emotional needs that he needs to do this, but the fact that there were times where he was doing things, ended up in trouble, and although Julie bailed him out, she never really made it feel like, I'm doing this because I like you. You don't get that. They have that, but it's never said, at least not until way, way, way later about why they're linked and they find out all that stuff. So on one hand, creepy stalker. On the other hand, person organically trying to develop a positive relationship with a stranger in a way that both of them are going to benefit from. So there you go, two extremes.
Fair enough. So now let's segue then from Max to Julie. And I think there is some guilt there with Julie that as to why she treats Max this way. And then there's also an indication that her lifestyle shows some repression and or PTSD as a result of the sexual assault. But again, that's one of those things that because you don't know about the assault until much, much later. And then when you go back and you look at everything that she did from the beginning, then you go, oh, that's why she is sort of the way that she is.
You know what? I'm going to challenge that just a little bit, because the defense mechanism that she uses after the assault was well established before the assault ever occurred. I would say the first traumatic experience that she had was with that rabbit. The fact that she had what most of us would consider to be an innocent creature, and she was doing her best and fostering a bond with that innocent creature. Mind you, thank goodness they don't really show much of what the rabbit looks like, except you see a part of it and it's twitching, and that's it. In other words, it's indicating this creature is suffering. This creature is severely injured, and really, there's nothing you're going to be able to do for it. And she holds on for dear life, literally holding it under the bed, and would hear it, just barely holding on to its last remaining breaths. And her parents just move it out, and she lets mom take care of it because mom always takes care of everything. She's always the person that just shuts everything down. And I know we mentioned it already with the shovel, but the point was that when things are bad or when things are not going the way you're supposed to, even when you care about them, you shut it down. You close it off. You don't even touch it. And that's it. So the next major trauma that she had with a person doing an evil thing, no question about it, the number of times it would come up, and to the writer's credit, he was consistent and pointed out she shuts it down. When other people bring it up, she just says, no, we're not talking about it. Even with the great reveal with Mr. Gone and all of the background, that part, no, we're not actually talking about it. She's consistent with that. And therefore, why wouldn't she handle any other situation that way? You have an odd couples scenario with a guy that, yes, you ended up having this connection with. You caused him harm. And now, similar to that rabbit, you have an opportunity to make things right. Don't talk about the negative that happened. Like, just shut that down. Shut it out. Close it off in your mind. But the idea that you can take something like that and make it right, which of course has the great symbolism of the fact that the Maxx has the rabbit head in the Outback when he takes the mask off. The fact that you can just go ahead and take something that was a negative then and see if you could, quote unquote, fix it now.
Yeah, he's Brer Lappin.
Yeah. So it's fascinating that you take something that's incredibly psychoanalytic at its core and you put it in a comic medium like that. That's impressive. I'll give a lot of credit to that, because in a way that words can't quite explain, it shows what people do when they're in stressful situations. And it shows that it's likely going to be what they do, even if the stressor changes. Even if it's not exactly the same as before, they're going to kind of follow that pattern. I think I've said this before. History doesn't repeat itself. It rhymes. So that's what Julie does. There's also the dynamic that Julie is a social worker and she's trying to do therapy with a teenager. So she knows and has had the experience and the education to know about many of these things. And it's alluded to when she first starts getting the glimpses before the full exposition happens about why it's a rabbit and why there's an Outback and all of those things, and why she shows up sometimes as a child form in her own Outback. It's because she still has to foster and develop that part of herself that she repressed for years and years. And that child is begging to be developed into a more mature adult. I also enjoyed the fact that when Julie comes to all of this realization, and even though the Maxx is not going to be what he was and it's just Dave, that Outback still existed. And what is it? The Leopard Queen?
Mm-hmm.
There's a great panel because Julie is still complaining about all the things that are going on in her life to Sarah. And Sarah's just like, wow, I liked it better when you were messed up, or something like that. I'm paraphrasing. But you could see they kept the panel just to let you know that the Outback exists. And the Leopard Queen at this point looks fully formed and basically saying, yeah, I got this. So in other words, it's giving a hint that internally she's starting to develop potentially something that could be more positive. It doesn't go that way, but in theory, if she allows herself to take some of that internal, whatever you want to call it, repression, shutting down, and actually let some of that out in a healthy way, she could be a better person. There are glimpses of it. It just doesn't happen. So I think it's realistic because no one's perfect. And unfortunately, even when people try, they're still going to have setbacks. She still doesn't really master the idea of how to have healthy relationships with others in a long-term setting. But I just like the fact that you give the glimpse that it can still happen at any point as long as the person's willing to put in the effort.
I think that's very fair. And it's just like I said, Julie, after reading this, because as I said, I watched the cartoon from the beginning, many, many years ago, and I read one or two issues, and I think it was like in the middle. So I didn't really know what the hell was going on, because this is not a book you can pick up and just start, from wherever. You need to start from square one. So after reading the entire run, I almost feel like we can do an entire episode just on Julie. Outside of the Maxx, because Julie, I think, is certainly one of the most interesting characters, even though she's not the focal point. Her growth and her progression as a character is really what drives so much of the story, particularly for Maxx, because Maxx doesn't have any agency outside of Julie's story, because as we later find out, of course, he would be dead if not for Julie's, actions. So even though the Maxx is the title character, Julie Winters to me is the compelling character, and she has the strongest arc outside of, I would say, our next character, Mr. Gone. Mr. Gone, Artie Pender. He's got a fuck up story.
Yeah, it's a laundry list. Yeah.
It is a very, very interesting story. We get his origin story, and it's actually called like Mr. Gone's origin story in like issue 22, 23, somewhere around there. It's after the 10-year time jump. Sarah, at this point, again, an adult, has somewhat of a relationship with her father, even though she doesn't. She hates him, but she's like, I hate him, but I love him. And I'm not really sure. She hates the fact that she loves him. And we'll get into a little bit about that. But he gives her his diary and he says, I want you to read this, but only till I'm done. And she's like, well, screw this. I'm going to read it anyway. And it's his backstory. And the entire issue is his diary being told through flashbacks about his failed marriages, who he was as a person before all this Outback stuff happened, and then what happened in his childhood that led to all of this. So he's got the TV tropes refers to it as the Freudian excuse. He was sexually abused as a child, and then he turns that abuse onto numerous people, including his wives, of which there are at least two, and then all these other people, and he becomes this very misogynistic person. And there's a quote in the beginning of the book, pre-time jump, where he said, it's this horrible slag on women. And then we find out many, many years later that he feels guilty over it. But here's the thing. He tries to kill himself repeatedly, but he's unable to die because of his connection to the Outback's power. So this leads to him sort of trying to act repentant. He now, as I said, after the 10-year time jump, now he's helping women who have been abused. He's, working, and he's basically saying to Sarah, what he says to Sarah is very interesting, because he's almost gaslighting her, because she said, you raped and murdered all these people. And he said, that's your perception of everything. Your perception is a little skewed, and it's very gaslighty. Yeah. And I thought that it really detracted from everything else that they were saying about his potential face turn, so to speak, to use a wrestling term, that he's supposed to be this good guy, and he's supposed to be trying to reestablish his relationship with Sarah, And yet he's telling her, no, that's not what happened, or you're remembering it wrong. And she's like, no, I know this was real. And he just goes, no, 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 no.
Right. It's fascinating because it's clear that at certain points he believes his own bullshit. Pardon my language. He really thinks that because he now has a positive spin on all of the motivations he has for helping people in the present, that everyone else around him has to jump on board and be totally fine with it because he's a changed man. As we know, people have long memories. They don't forget. They may forgive, but they'll never forget. And the people that you have actually hurt aren't going to automatically forget, and they're less likely to forgive. So a part of the maturity that Artie doesn't have is the recognition that if you're as mature as you say you are, you're willing to let that go. In other words, recognize that some people are forever going to want to punch you in the face because of what you've done, or want you dead, to be blunt, because of the things that he did. They're atrocities. We're not talking minor inconveniences. We're talking about crimes and true destruction of people's lives. So from that standpoint, there has to be some awareness, self-awareness, that you're not going to be the sinner turned saint. I know we've had some spins on this before where we've talked about it with Hank Pym about the idea that you just take one negative thing and you just always harp on it, and people can change and grow and all of that. That's fine. But when you have a track record of time after time after time after time after time, and you finally make an adjustment, and I'm going to go ahead and give the benefit of the doubt that things have changed, then truly move forward. Don't try and pull the past with you. That's what I thought Artie was doing. That was my interpretation. I know that his daughter sought him out for knowledge and for information, and because there's that natural biological affection that people have for their parents, that's going to be there. That's understandable. Plus, as a character, Artie does sometimes come across as very witty and can make connections. It's clear. That doesn't mean that you succeeded. You did your job and now everything is great with her. But he sees it that way. And therefore, his point is, once it's there, and I think it's very telling when he's out fishing, putting insects on a hook, I thought that was the perfect timing of it, because he was looking at it as, I have her now in my life and I'm going to do everything I can to keep her here. So what tools do I have that I can do this? And making her, to invalidate everything that she felt about him and everything that's happened, is a great way to do it. Because, as we'll discuss, Sarah really has some trouble with self-doubt and basically being a supporter of everyone around her. And he naturally is able to manipulate that. As someone with what I think are significant antisocial traits, which often do come from a place of trauma, I think that's natural for him. But, like I said, pardon my language before, but it's absolute garbage. It is 100% garbage. I appreciate that he believes it's the truth and that he is making a good faith effort with people that don't have the exact same connection to him. But the fact that it's his own kin, it's his own family, that's where he pulls out all the stops and tries to make everything just picture perfect. And that's ridiculous.
Yeah, Sarah is talking to his girlfriend, landlord. I'm not really sure who and
that's the point, though. He has created a connection with someone, and you don't, and as
Gaynor,
outsiders,
I think her name is.
Yeah. And that's well done, because that's the point. We know that he's made that connection. It's not our place to know how he made that connection or what it truly is, because he's the one that's the puppet master pulling the strings. Anyway, go ahead.
But I was going to say is Sarah is basically trying to explain to, again, I believe her name is Gaynor, that he's not this and that, and he's terrible. And Gaynor is of the mindset that, she's got the wool pulled over her eyes, and she said, oh no, he told me, everything, and I'm totally okay with it, and you need to be okay with it. And Sarah's like, does it's Zoolander. I feel like I'm taking crazy pills. Like she's like, am I the only one who realizes this? And so again, as I said, you can't tell the story one without the other. So now let's move into Sarah. Sarah is such a doormat character especially in the beginning and even post time jump.
Oh yeah, I was gonna say that didn't stop.
No, and what I find interesting, and again, this is the way the artwork is told, is that it's very rare that you see Sarah's eyes, and that often it's because she wears glasses. When you're looking at her face, all you see is the reflection of everyone else in her face, so that you never see her eyes. You just see other people, because Sarah doesn't have much of a personality or characterization on herself. She exists as a reflection of the other characters around her and the other people in her life.
There is a great panel where she points out that members of her family had a certain vision of her and what she could be. And she's even going through the point, she's looking through fake eyelashes, she's changing her style and everything. And the actual result, from the outside looking in, I'm not trying to judge or blame or shame anybody. I'm just saying the actual result, it was like, that actually is a good look. And she just totally throws it away and says, no, I'm just going to be me. In theory, that can be a positive. But the way it's done, it's very clear. It's more like, this is a change that's too scary for me to endure right now. And it's not what I know. Therefore, I'm going to just continue to keep things the way they are.
Yeah, exactly. It can be a situation where you're true to self and you don't want to wear this mask. You don't want to take on this persona. You don't want to pretend to be something that you're not. And that is a good thing, but not when it's done for the reasons of, well, I'm not worthy of improvement.
Exactly.
And, no matter what, I'm still going to be this dump and no one's ever going to love me. No one's going to this, that, and the other.
Right.
So therefore, why should I even bother? Which is her reasoning for not changing. And so then we find in the time jump, now she's with this other guy in this horrible apartment that just seems like physiologically.
At some points they're walking through, what are they, doggy doors, cat doors?
Yeah,
whatever?
Doggy doors to get to the bathroom. In order for her to sit on the toilet, she has to keep her head underneath the sink because it's so cramped.
Right. Not to mention that there's an actual hole that you can see through to the other side, so you can actually make eye contact with the other person.
Yeah. And so the entire the universe is set up such that apparently now in this time jump,
we got to get into this.
Fathers are financially responsible for their children, which apparently it's alluded to that the government created this law and set this whole process up just so they could track Sarah, who would then have to find Mr. Gone.
Right, because they want to harness the fact that Mr. Gone has all of these powers and abilities.
Yeah, so the government created this entire law just so that Sarah would have to find Mr. Gone so that they could, so they're following her so they can find him.
I know this is going to be a tangent, but I can't help it because doggone it, it's our podcast and we can do whatever the hell we want. Nicotine in cereal.
Yeah. Yeah, that's also a part of the future. Is nicotine is in everything, and this is that's the Alan Moore written issue is all about Natrixo, Nabixo, whatever it is. Yeah. I mean, it's supposed to be Nabisco, obviously, but for lawyer friendly version. There's nicotine in everything, and he's looking for Twinkies and Ho-Hos, because they don't have as much nicotine as some of these other foods. But I mean, there's like literally nicotine in pretty much everything so that everybody gets addicted because this is, I guess, what they thought the government was going to be like. In any case, Sarah, post-time jump, now she's struggling with this because she remembers what happened with Julie and with Dave and with Mr. Gone. And she's struggling now because she has to have this connection with her father for money, at one point she's like, I don't want to have anything to do with you. And that includes your money. But she wants to love him because he's her father. And she feels guilty over that. She's not really sure exactly of what happened 10 years ago, because as I said, now her father is gaslighting her. It's a whole bunch of f***ery going on inside her head. And Mr. Gone is playing a big part of that. And as we were just saying, he's the puppet master and he's pulling her strings, because we know that Sarah is so gullible and malleable as a person that she'll go along with it just to have some sort of human connection. And so Sarah is the character I definitely pity the most out of everyone.
That's fair. That's fair. Because she's the ultimate caregiver. That's the way I read it. And the way that at times the character herself described it.
When she was typing in the diary post time jump that she was living with a guy who had a fiance who would come back and
it was clear that she was having other relationships and he didn't care. And she said, well, then why do I care so much? Literally about other people and what they're doing. She cares more than the people involved.
Yeah, she's trying to get him out of this relationship where he's being used by this woman. And then she shows up and she's like, oh, no, let's go out. And he's like, but I'm not dressed. And she goes, I don't really care. Let's go do it. And he goes, oh, okay. So he's a doormat. And then she's going, oh, he's so much better than that. But then why do I care about him if he doesn't care?
Right.
So she acknowledges it. She doesn't do anything about it.
And let's bring this back. So before the time jump, she had a couple of people that were friends, if not close friends, at least acquaintances. And they would always talk about the Maxx and actually hear what he had to say. So it always came from this place of, I'm a terrible writer and I know I'm not going to amount to anything, but at least I have this cool guy that's around. So the fact that he knows who I am, that's good enough for me. And it's one of the few things that really keeps her going, because the way she describes her relationship with her parents, it's very similar. She feels like she's a castaway, although it's very clear from the way it's written that her parents don't view her that way. That's her interpretation of how her mother, I should say, not parents, because Mr. Gone, is a different circumstance. All of this is a combination, I think, of the split between avoidance and dependence. She didn't want to be scrutinized at times because she felt like everything she did was a screw up. She knew that if people really dug into what she was doing, they would think that she was useless, ugly, stupid, lazy, crazy, whatever. While on the other hand, as any normal human being, and by normal, I do mean all of us, all human beings, she knew that she needed people around. And the only way you're going to be able to do that is to prove that you have some level of value, some level of worth. But if you don't feel that about yourself, then you could at least show that you can be the person that helps everybody else do what they want with their lives, or what they say they want with their lives. So you are sublimating everything that you think about, dream of, whatever, for the sake of everyone else's wishes. That can, I was going to say temporarily sustain. No, it really can't sustain you for your whole life if that's really the way you want to live. But I think it ends up resulting in a lot of emotional stunting. And I know I haven't even specifically said that about her relationship with her father, but that's true for everybody. The fact that it's her father, and her father, by the way, as we've already established, has done some very evil things, even though he's quote unquote better now, it creates this dynamic where she has the common sense to say, person doing evil things, I really need to stay away from them. And she does a great job for 20 something issues to maintain that. Better than Julie, better than the Maxx, to say, this guy is bad news. We need to stop. And she's the one, when she hears the tape of his previous recording, saying, I got it. I understand all of this. This makes sense to me now. She does a great job resolving it. But once the event was over, she went back to just being nothing. It's a real shame. Once again, similar to Julie, we see the glimpses of what these people could be if they continued along this path of self-actuation. And it just gets dropped by each of them in their own way. So with Sarah, she ends up back to being the person that just does everything that everybody else wants her to do, and back to being subservient to a guy that she doesn't even like, but knows that she needs. And even when she gets the information that she wants, I'll admit I didn't read the whole thing, but in terms of what her reality turns out to be when they are able to handle this banana slug thing and all of that, it's kind of like, well, all right, I guess this is what it is. I give up. At least that's the way I interpreted it. I mean, I may be wrong about that, but I'm just saying that's the way I kind of interpreted it.
Yeah, well, I was going to say that Sarah, her arc towards the end of the series is very much only motivated by the notion that I'm going to die, and these people that I maybe used to care about or occasionally care about are going to be impacted by it. So I guess I have to save them. But there's no real motivation other than that. It's not out of any sense of wanting to be a better person or anything. It's, I guess I have to help save them, and she does express some remorse when she finds out that Julie was supposedly on the list of people killed by this Iago, the banana slug, that, even though she hasn't had a connection with Julie for 10 years, and she is very angry at Julie for abandoning her and Dave, the Maxx, that she still has that emotional response of shock and sadness that she believes that Julie is dead. Spoiler alert, Julie's not dead, but we think that Julie's dead. But again, so her arc at the end is motivated not by any self-actuation, as you were saying, but rather just, all right, I guess the world's going to end if I don't do something, so we might as well do. And then even then, time in the universe ends in a very weird way. And then we're not really sure if Sarah ends up as an is or not, which again, we didn't really get into the ises, but now 10 years later, they're exploding fairies unless you keep them wet. It's a whole, again, it's fucked up. There's just no other way to explain it. It's fucked up. I literally don't know how else to describe it other than I don't know what he's talking. And we didn't even get into, like I said, some of the side conversations. The one feminist that Julie is a big fan of. I was reading.
I'm not going.
I was reading. She's apparently an advocate for NAMBLA of all things.
I don't know. No. I'm not going there. I don't. No.
So, all right. Well, this is a good place as any to take a break, and then when we come back, we'll discuss treatment. So stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Hey, Jen.
Hey, Micah.
Remember watching the Friends premiere?
No, I never saw that.
Oh, but remember those first Wu-Tang solo albums that came out?
No, I don't.
Remember that terrible Frasier theme song?
Oh my god. Remember I was sent away from home when I was 16, sent to like the middle of nowhere, Montana, therapeutic boarding school. None of this rings a bell?
Oh, yeah.
Join us for I Never Saw That, a podcast about mid-90s pop culture and Montana.
What about ER? You saw that though, right?
No!
Everybody has a story, and not all of those stories are clear black and white issues, even when we think they are. We wonder, how did this happen? Or what is that like? Or what happens next? Are you sure you really want to know? This is Ignorance Was Bliss at IWB Podcast.
Hi, I'm Linda.
And I'm Jane.
And we have a brand new podcast called Bedknobs and Broomflicks, where we talk about witches of the entertainment world. From the horror movies Warlock, Suspiria, The Witch, and The Blair Witch Project,
to the more comedic or whimsical, such as Harry Potter, Hocus Pocus, Elvira, Mistress of the Dark, and The Blair Witch Project.
No movie, TV show, or book is off limits.
All witches, man witches, sorry warlocks, we're not calling you that, witches brews, witches of history, familiars, and witch-like activity will be discussed as we laugh and have fun talking about the wonderful world of witches.
So join us every other week for some fun witchy talk.
All witches welcome.
Hi, this is Robbie Thompson, and you're listening to Capes on the Couch.
And we're back. So, in-universe treatment. I don't even know, man. I got nothing.
So I kind of alluded to it way early on when you were giving the summation of the Maxx as a run. A lot of this has to do with shifting realities and dream states. And although I'll admit this is not my area of expertise, if we're going to have a show, let's just go all in on it. Let's do some dream therapy. I'm talking almost Inception type stuff. We need to load these people up with some ketamine and
Ketamine? Is this Moon Knight?
and I know ketamine actually is approved for treatment of depression, but the point is ketamine also can have some dissociative properties, and that's what I want. I want these people to get into, if we're going to be in the Outback, let's just go and let's explore everything. And
Just don't get trampled by a hoolie.
well, the point is, whatever we're going to deal with, my job is to be the jerk that doesn't use the metaphors. I need to name things. Forget hoolie, forget forget whatever those animals were that kind of looked like tigers but didn't have faces, whatever. I'm naming them for what they are in our reality, and I'm going to call them out. This spirit animal, you mean the repressed trauma that you have decided to hold on to in a way that's going to sound innocuous and be a protector. Okay, that thing. Cool. The ises. You mean all of the repressed emotions that you aren't able to deal with on a day-to-day basis that just aggregate year after year, and when you don't do anything with them, when they come to our reality, they come flooding out in true horrible forms. That stuff. Okay. You're leopard, whatever. You mean the idealized form of yourself that can handle absolutely anything and is in command of her life. I like that. How do we bring that forward into the real world? All of it. Like, just attack it head on. And just do it as long as it takes. That's where I'm going. That's that is the type of thing where if we're gonna have this bizarro BS, then why hide it? Why do this dance back and forth? That's therapy. Julie knows about that as a social worker. Forget that. We've messed with reality. If we're gonna fix it, then frickin' fix it.
Okay. I never thought I would hear you suggesting ketamine and dream therapy.
I said, that's not truly my area of expertise. Well, the ketamine stuff I'm familiar with, but I don't do dream therapy. I don't want to. Oh boy.
Just say no to most drugs, am I right?
Yes. But my point is, we're already in a really screwed up environment. We gotta fix it. Let's go ahead and get our hands dirty. And they do. It's a fun read. It's wonderful what they do. I'm just saying, it would have been nice to have someone rather than a truly antisocial, manipulative jerk like Mr. Gone running everything, to have someone that actually has everyone's best interest at heart as a professional doing it. That probably would have worked out a little better. I'd like to think that even though I'm hitting them over the head really hard with this stuff, that the fact that I'm a professional and would at least say, look, I'm coming at this this is all totally crazy to me. And acknowledging it from the start rather than gently easing in, that they would respect that more.
Maybe, but that's not how Sam Kieth wrote it. So I guess we'll never know. So out of universe.
Okay, first of all, let me just make this clear. There's no way that I would have a situation where I would try and treat all of these people all at once in one group. There's too many negative things that could happen with all of them. Let me just jump in and say that. I apologize. I know I usually don't step on your toes like that, but
no, I was going to say I don't know how you would even begin to process any reality. I think Julie and Sarah probably, well, no. I mean, I was going to say Julie and Sarah are the only two realistic ones, but I mean, Mr. Gone, Artie, I think, has some very legitimate trauma. It's just how he handles it. And then the whole...
a person with traumatic experiences with a lot of cluster B personality traits that still ends up manipulating others. It's like The Simpsons with Mr. Burns, where he hangs out with Lisa a lot. And she says, you are a horrible person, but now that you are trying to be good, you're even more horrible than before. I
don't remember that episode, but in any case,
okay.
I'm not Bird. I don't have them all memorized. All right. So then let's just break it down one by one then.
Okay.
What would you do with Dave? How would you even equate?
Well, Dave was an average Joe guy that got hit by a car. I mean, the first thing is, let's get this guy some real traumatic brain injury cognitive therapy so that he's able to gain back his functioning. She left him in an alleyway. So that's real basic. Forget all the other psychobabble, and I'm not saying that as an insult. I'm saying in general, if you're dealing with much more concrete focused things, do that first before you get into a lot of the other things that are going to develop in terms of the emotional responses and potential trauma that he's going to have to deal with.
Yeah, fix the body first, then you can worry about the mind.
Right. And fix the brain first so that the mind comes back. You know, can you
Also
imagine?
true.
Yeah, I mean, I can't imagine that he didn't have a brain bleed or something like that where a lampshade takes over your head and manifests as a superhero. Anyway, that's not the point. I know we're back into reality, but also this has to do with something called reality testing. It's something that we do with our initial assessments with someone, because you and I can have a very basic conversation and everything can sound hunky-dory. And unless you know how to pierce the veil, you may not get into some of the potential psychotic content that a person has underneath, because the person has learned how to hide it and learned how to talk around or dance around certain things, especially with other professionals who are actively looking for it. So some of these characters may have pieces of that. I'm not saying that it's automatically a problem if you believe in supernatural things or you're very spiritual or anything like that. I'm not denigrating that. I am saying, though, that if you get to the point where that is so overwhelming that the basic tenets of what you do in your life, such as you are trying to climb something that you think is a volcano, but then it turns out that you're on a mailbox. Just saying, because I remember that specifically as a panel with Julie and the Maxx, like hunched over on this thing. That's a problem. And believe it or not, some people end up in circumstances in the ER. I just had a case, once again, not violating HIPAA. I just had a case with a person that presented totally fine. And then we got collateral information from the people that witnessed the event, and it was just a total chaotic mess. So piercing through that can be really challenging. And on an outpatient basis, you really have to toe the line. I know I'm back to the real therapy thing. I'm not going to hit someone over the head about this stuff. So if I sense any of that, I may try and see if I can gather some of that information, because that's going to tailor what I provide the patient back to the tools in the toolbox, and something that we haven't talked about in a long time. With these cases, with these patients, in the way that we're describing what's going on with them, oh yeah, I'm getting into medication. And I can tailor it where, for someone like Sarah, if they're not really breaking with reality, but they are concerned that the things that people are saying, what's real and what's not, like, it's interesting. I do think an SSRI, a selective serotonin reuptake inhibitor, can really help there in the long run to help manage what's going on with your mood as one of the tools. If we're talking about someone who, like the Maxx or Dave, who seems to just fly off the handle about certain things and acts first and consequences be damned, then maybe a mood stabilizer such as, valproic acid or lithium may be in the cards, and say, you know what? It's not that I don't think you need to act on things that you consider to be important. It's just I need you to have a bit of a buffer before you take that action. And this will help lengthen the fuse so you don't go off like a stick of dynamite. If you have someone that has significant trauma and really just at times seems to just lose their connection with reality because they created their own internal one, then I can use a medication that can serve as a mood stabilizing agent, but also has antipsychotic properties and is actually registered by the FDA as an antipsychotic. So, for example, if it's a matter of the person has distorted dreams and problems with sleep and they want that regulated, then something like quetiapine, which is one of the antipsychotics that's also approved for example, bipolar depression, that might help mellow things out a bit. So there are certain avenues that I know I would need to take with people depending on just how intense what they're going through is and just how much I have to toe the line between what's reality and what's not. So I think in as brief a period of time as I can, while still acknowledging that there are so many variations on this. Oh, I'm sorry. For someone that appears to have a lot of antisocial properties and everything else, I can make sure that I have the police on speed dial. I'm half joking. I would have to make sure that that person has the type of positive supports and other agents besides me dealing with the circumstance. Because me being alone and acting and trying to figure out how to treat that person without those other agencies involved can be a very dangerous situation. So I didn't want to forget about, our good friend Artie.
No, that's fine. I was going to say, all right. So I guess you covered everybody then, right?
Oh yeah. Yeah, because believe it or not, this is similar to what a typical day is, because everybody has their own situations, their own issues, their own concerns. And I have to make sure I shift from one person to another. And although there may be a common theme, sometimes I'm creating that in my own mind just because I get through the day. And in general, sometimes as human beings, we recognize patterns even when there are none. So I'll give just a random example. Wow, this seems like a real depression and suicide day. Like all the patients come in with some semblance of that, or wow, this is a heavy substance day, or whatever. That's me implying meaning where there may not be. But I still have to make sure that each person is treated individually. So that this was a great example of that. In this case, we do have certain common themes amongst the people because there were circumstances that they were all connected with one another. I also have to make sure that I'm treating them individually, and while acknowledging that the other people exist, I'm not automatically just pulling them in and looking at it from one point of view. In other words, I don't want to ever get in a situation where I think Julie's version is the version, or Sarah's version is the version, or heaven forbid, and he would probably give the best example because he knows how to do it. Mr. Gone's version is the version. Ugh. So these are things to be aware of. And the best way I could say it is the old saying, there's 3 sides to a story, not 2. Yours, mine, and the truth.
Oh, I always say that. My mother is very famous for saying that. So I get that from that level. So fascinating, interesting stuff. Well, as I said earlier, there's not going to be a skit because we would literally have to write a brand new Maxx story to figure out how to fit that in. I did give some serious thought about writing at least a treatment skit with just Dave, just the Maxx, where he's in and out of the Outback, and you're constantly trying to call him back, and he starts off there, and then he goes, he starts talking to you, and then he ends up in the Outback, and he starts seeing things. And
I know we always talk about this stuff off mic, but I think this is an opportunity where we can do this, and we could show sometimes the kind of brainstorming and kind of messed up minds that we have. My idea would have been, I'm dealing with Julie because Julie's a social worker, except it wouldn't be a skit where I'm treating Julie. It would be Julie being supervised by me treating Sarah.
Ooh.
Because my vision would have been the parts where Julie clearly starts to interject things that are really screwing her up, and being the bug in her ear saying, I wouldn't go down that road. Or, wow, you really need to work this out for yourself before you say anything to Sarah, or whatever. Just as random examples. I didn't have it fleshed out in my head, but that was one of my ideas.
Okay. Well, I think that's definitely an interesting one. And you and I, would have gone very different places with that. But like for me, I kind of envisioned treating it very much like the early issues.
Oh no, I get what you're saying. Yeah.
And really playing with that. And I was just thinking, like, from an audio engineering standpoint, getting to really play with the sound qualities and creating the ideas. And then
would you had a didgeridoo for the Outback?
So no, but I would have done like a lot of narration, and then there's something that is referenced a lot in the book early on, and it's done for a lot of humor, is the Maxx is narrating in his own mind, or so he thinks, and then he finds out that he's actually talking out loud.
Yep.
And people are like, what are you talking to? He's like, oh, damn it, I was talking out loud again.
Yep.
So he narrates his own thoughts out loud. So that would have been a source of humor in the skit. So I don't know. Maybe for the patrons, we'll come up with something if I can have some time to really play with it.
I think we just got an idea for some Patreon exclusive stuff. I'm not just talking about whether or not we do a skit. I'm wondering if we have different ideas for other previous episodes and skits that we can have as bonus content at some point.
Oh, absolutely. Because Lord knows, I mean, this is 65. We've certainly done enough skits and gone through enough characters at this point that maybe there's characters that are worthy of revisiting.
Yeah. Maybe we could have some guest people do some characters or think. I know we've had other people do them, but I'm just thinking now grand scale stuff. Don't worry about it.
No, this is great stuff, and this is all going to get left in the episode anyway. So, so on that note, as I said, since there is no official skit, we're going to end with the treatment there, and then we're going to move on to our ending. So, a reminder that of our sticker giveaway. Leave us a review. Send it to us in an email, capesonthecouch@gmail.com. We'll send you a sticker. You can find us on social media, Capes on the Couch, anywhere. You can email us, Capes on the Couch. We have a Discord server. If you use Discord, you can join our fan community. Go to tinyurl.com/Capes Discord, capital C and capital D, and join. We've got a lot of cool fans coordinating and communicating with each other. And you can listen to us as we record these episodes live. We're live streaming on YouTube, which we haven't done in some time. But we will definitely be getting back to that. We've got a Patreon page, patreon.com/Capes on the Couch. You can subscribe at a number of levels and acquire some of that exclusive content, which apparently there will be plenty more coming. We have a TeePublic page. I know the holidays are coming up. If you want to get your family and friends some cool Capes on the Couch merch, you can check that out. And we've got just the logo for right now. I have a couple of designs for our second shirt, which will be Because Comics. I just have to figure out exactly how to do that and get in touch with a graphic designer. And that's about it. You know, it's so our next episode is going to be Robbie Reyes, which is selected by our patron Ruby. And then we're going to take a winter break because Doc and I would like to spend some time with our families for the holidays, as I'm sure you would as well. But we will come back in January fully recharged and ready to roll. So on that note, I would strongly encourage and advise you all to go out and pick up some trade paperbacks of the Maxx. If you are more of a visual, a TV type person, you can really watch the series, and at the very least, the first 12 issues, it's basically the book with sound. So if you're at all interested in a very surreal, very 90s, very up comic book, I do urge you to go out and give this a look and give it a read. If nothing else, I promise you, it's not like anything else you've ever read. And that's a good thing, I think. So, Doc, anything you want to add?
Plenty. If you go through a significant trauma, please try and get help. If you are upset with someone, don't cut their head off. If you aren't sure who you are or what's going on, then please go to an emergency room or at least have some contact with family members. If you aren't sure what reality you're in, make sure you're taking your medications properly. And for the love of God, if you have someone that is actually trying to gaslight you, then find someone else who can keep you grounded. There are so many other things I could say right now because this comic is incredibly messed up. Yeah, okay, I'm done.
You sure?
Well, I don't want to continue with that rant because I need to save my voice.
Fair enough. But I think I appreciate your passion, if nothing else. So for Doc Issues, I'm Anthony Sitko. Thank you so much for listening. We will see you next week.
Capes on the Couch podcast is for entertainment purposes only. Dr. Issues is a psychiatrist, but he is not your psychiatrist and does not have knowledge of your individual situation. For any personal mental health concerns, please consult your own healthcare providers. For medical emergencies, please call 911 or the designated number in your area immediately. Remember that you are not alone and help is out there.